Okay, so get this. What if some ancient cultures, like way back, didn't just tell, like, stories, but actually put real history, like actual events, into their myths?
Fascinating.
Yeah, we're diving into the world of the Hopi people for this deep dive.
Okay.
Their prophecies are incredible, and, well, what they might tell us about, our past, maybe even our future. We're going to find out.
Right.
And to help guide us, we've got some incredible insights from Dr. Avon Stratman. She's like an expert on this stuff, and she was on this Crop FM podcast episode.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. So let's jump in.
Okay, so you're talking about geomythology, right? It's this really cool area of study where researchers, they look for links between like myths and real geological events, earthquakes, volcanoes, even floods.
Right. And it's like, whoa, these oral traditions pass down, generation after generation.
Yeah, right.
They might actually be surprisingly accurate records of those events.
Yeah, exactly. It really makes you think about how we try to record history, but then it gets edited, rewritten.
All the time.
But these oral traditions, they're like this direct line to the past.
That's blowing my mind a little, I gotta say. And the Hopi, they're like the masters of this. Right? Oral history?
They are. Archaeologists have actually looked at their accounts, and it's amazing. They're really accurate.
Really?
Yeah, and it's even more impressive when you think about how they actually preserve this knowledge,
Yeah.
Pure memorization.
Wow.
It's intricate details about their history, beliefs, prophecies, all passed down through generations with incredible accuracy.
That's wild. It's like learning a whole library, like by heart.
So what does all this meticulously preserved history tell us about how the Hopi, view the world?
It's really interesting. They have this cyclical view of creation and destruction.
Okay.
They believe a powerful being, so Tuknen, has created and destroyed 4 worlds so far.
4.
4. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Each destruction, it follows a similar pattern.
Okay.
Fire, then ice, and then this massive flood. It's almost like a reset button for the planet,
Okay, hold on. A pattern of fire, ice, and floods. That can't just be some random coincidence.
Right.
That makes you wonder, were they seeing real cataclysmic events happening again and again?
Makes you think.
But what about the people during these world-ending events? Did anybody survive? Well, that's where the story gets even more intriguing. The Hopi believe that some people were chosen to survive each destruction.
Okay.
And here's the thing. They had help. They talk about this thing called a kopavi.
How kopavi?
Yeah, they describe it as like a crown that you wear on your head.
Okay.
Similar to, that idea of a crown chakra.
Oh, right, yeah.
And this kopavi, it allowed them to connect with Sotuknong and receive guidance.
So it's like their spiritual antenna.
Exactly.
Their direct line to the divine.
Exactly.
But how did this kopavi actually help them survive like a world-ending event? We're talking like the planet's blowing up here, right?
Well, think of it like a spiritual early warning system. So those with a functioning kopavi, meaning, they were in tune with their spiritual side, they'd get these instructions from Sotuknong guiding them to safety. He'd tell them to follow maybe a star at night, a cloud by day, anything, leading them to this gathering point.
Wow. So they've got this like spiritual guidance system,
Right.
But they still needed a real, physical refuge, right? A safe haven, somewhere to hide from these cataclysms.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really wild.
So wait, did you say the ant people, like actual ants?
Well, not exactly ants like we know them.
Okay.
The Hopi, they describe them more like beings, right? But with these narrow hips.
Narrow hips. That's an interesting detail.
Right. And they lived in these super intricate underground shelters.
Right. Okay. So underground, like a whole civilization just like vibing beneath the surface.
Exactly. Safe and sound from all the chaos up top.
Wild. I'm trying to actually picture these ant people in my head though. Narrow hips, you said. Like, were skinny jeans a thing in the previous world?
Maybe. But here's the thing. There's this really fascinating part in the Hopi account. So Tukneng, he actually tells the chosen humans to learn from these ant people.
So it's not just about holing up and surviving, right? There's this whole learning aspect to it.
It's like these cataclysms, right? There were also opportunities.
Okay.
Like a chance to level up.
To download new skills. What kind of knowledge are we talking about here?
So that's the really mind-blowing part. After every single one of these destructions, the surviving humans, they would come out with new skills, stuff they never had before.
What, suddenly they're master chefs?
Not exactly, but for example, after that first world, They came out knowing how to build settlements, how to trade, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, wow.
They even, stopped talking to animals.
Wait, what? Hold up. They could talk to animals before.
Apparently, yeah. It's like they went through this underground crash course in, I don't know, Civilization 101.
Wow. That is wild. So it's not just about, the Hopi getting knowledge, it's about getting it from being so different from them. What does that tell us about how they viewed knowledge and learning?
It's like this deep respect for wisdom,
Yeah.
no matter where it comes from.
Yeah.
The Hopi tradition, it suggests that knowledge, it goes beyond just us, even beyond our planet.
I mean, think about it, right? These stories, they were passed down for generations.
Right.
Long before we were even talking about, aliens or anything like that.
It makes you wonder what else they knew.
Right. What else is still out there?
Exactly.
But how does this all connect back to us, to our world now, the fourth world, right?
Okay, so the Hopi, they say the third world ended in a massive flood. This time, though, they didn't go to the ant people.
Really?
Yeah, they describe surviving in these sealed tubes.
Sealed tubes. I mean, talk about a survival strategy. What were those like?
And get this, they were guided by this being they call Spider-Woman.
Spider-Woman.
To this high mountain, which they say was the highest point of their world after everything got flooded.
Wow, so they're literally outrunning, the planet changing.
And this detail, it suggests that maybe their journey, it wasn't through space like some people think.
Yeah.
It was across the planet.
During, crazy sea levels rising.
That's right.
Okay, so they're running from the waves, following Spider-Woman. Where does it all lead?
America. They actually describe landing here.
No way.
Being greeted by Sotiknang, and he shows them these stepstones, basically these islands that help them reach the new world.
Okay. That's an actual path.
Right. And it's in this new land that they meet another mysterious group, the Katina.
Okay, now the Kachina, those are the beams with the really intense masks, right? The ones we see pictures of.
Yeah, those are the ones. And you got to remember, these stories were being told way back in 1963.
Okay.
Long before a lot of this stuff was even something people talked about.
Right, right.
But the Hopi, they're very clear about this.
Mm-hmm.
There are two types of Kachina.
Two types. All right, now you have to tell me more. Who are these Kachina? So two types of Kachina, you said. We've got the nature spirits, and then the real deal Kachina.
Yeah. So the Hopi, they describe them as beings from other planets. They became their teachers.
Whoa. Okay, so we're talking about extraterrestrial contact way back then.
And this isn't a new interpretation or anything. This comes straight from their oral history.
Wow, that's incredible. Passed down for, what, centuries?
At least.
Okay, so what kind of things did these alien Kachina teach them?
Well, they describe building a whole city called Palatquapi.
Palatquapi.
It might have been somewhere in South America.
Okay.
And get this, in Palatquapi, the Kachinas shared all sorts of knowledge.
Like what?
I mean, we're talking about the human body, the stars, how they influence us,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's wild. It's what we're just figuring out now with modern science, they were learning thousands of years ago from these Kachina. It's pretty mind-blowing. It really is. What happened to this city? And what about the Kachina, the ones who were teaching there?
So the story goes that Palatquapi, it was attacked.
Oh, no.
And the Katina, they chose to stay and defend it while the Hopi escaped.
Through these tunnels?
Yeah, secret tunnels. But before they left, the Kachina, they told the Hopi, remember us. Remember us through masks and ceremonies.
Wow. And they actually kept that tradition alive. Those Kachina costumes, the rituals, it's all to remember that contact.
It's a powerful reminder.
It really is. But it wasn't all just, knowledge and good times, right?
Yeah.
The Kachina, they also left behind some prophecies about the future.
Yeah, and we're not talking about some vague predictions. They left 9 specific signs that would signal the end of the fourth world, our world.
And these signs, they line up with, actual things happening today.
Some people think so. Like that 9th sign, the one about a dwelling place in the sky falling to Earth.
People are saying that's the International Space Station, right?
Yeah. But the Hopi, they didn't really do dates. It's more about recognizing the patterns, the cycles repeating.
So less about a specific year and more about understanding the larger message.
Exactly.
That makes sense. What about that speech that Hopi elder Thomas Banyasha at the UN 1992, wasn't it?
Right. The Hopi elders decided they had to share their knowledge with the world.
Because of what was happening even back then.
They saw the wars, the environmental problems. To them, it was like their prophecies were coming true.
So Banyasha, he was A messenger.
You could say that. He urged everyone to, like, turn away from just material things, reconnect with nature, find a better way to live.
It's interesting because that message, it's like a solid game plan for surviving any kind of major disaster, you know?
Right. And when you think about it, those values,
Yeah.
they line up with being able to not just survive, but actually be okay after something big happens.
Thrive, even.
Yeah, exactly. Thrive.
It's like a survival guide hidden in the prophecy. But, you know, it gets even more, I don't know, intense. There's that prophecy about the Kachina taking their masks off in front of kids, right? The ones who haven't been initiated. And then the spiritual war happens.
That's a big one.
It is. And I gotta be honest, it's a little scary.
So imagine, right? Suddenly everyone knows, it's revealed. These beings, these real Kachina, they exist. They've been here.
And then
Chaos. Everything we thought we knew, out the window. It'd be huge.
the ultimate disclosure event. We're already freaking out about finding microbes on Mars. Can you imagine? But you said spiritual war. What does that even mean?
It might not be a war with, like, guns and bombs, you know?
Okay.
More like a clash of ideas. People who cling to the old ways,
Yeah.
fighting against this new reality. The Hopi, I think they were trying to warn us about what happens when we're too stuck in our beliefs, especially when the unknown shows up.
So it's not just about surviving a flood or an earthquake. It's about surviving our own minds freaking out.
Maybe. And that struggle, that fight to adapt, it might be at the center of this whole Blue Star Kachina prophecy.
The Blue Star Kachina. That's the one that's supposed to, like, herald the end of the fourth world, right? Is it a real star, like up in space?
Well, they say it's a blue star. It appears in the sky, and then boom.
The end.
But like with that ninth sign,
Mm-hmm.
they don't really give specifics. Is it a comet? Some other celestial event? Something else entirely?
Given everything we talked about, you know, with these cataclysmic cycles and all, it'd be easy to say, oh yeah, it's another planet killer. But what I find really interesting is that the Hopi prophecies, they don't end with just like destruction. There's a way forward. They talk about a fifth world.
It's a message of hope.
Right. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's a chance to not just make it through, but to actually be better off in this new world.
Exactly. But that hope, it depends on us changing, breaking out of these old habits and, like, embracing a new way of being.
Okay, so what does that mean? What does that look like?
The Hopi, they talk about living in balance with nature, respect for all life, you know, recognizing that we're all connected. It's about shifting from this me-first attitude to one of cooperation, compassion. Like, we're all in this together.
It's about realizing our choices, they matter.
Yeah. What we do affects everything around us.
It all comes back to those Kachina taking off their masks. It's like this forced wake-up call for all of us to see ourselves good and bad.
It makes you think, you know, these prophecies, they're not just predicting. They're making us look at ourselves.
It's a challenge.
It is. What are we creating? What kind of future are we choosing?
Big questions. So if someone's listening to this, right, and they want to learn more about the Hopi, the prophecies, this whole connection between ancient cultures and our future, where do they even start?
Dr. Stratman's book, The Stone Age Paradox, is a great place. She does a phenomenal job, really ties everything together.
And she'll be at that Pitay's Congress coming up.
Right, right.
So definitely check that out if you want to go even deeper down the rabbit hole. Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive on the Hopi. Their prophecies, this future they talk about, it's definitely given us a lot to think about. And if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that.
We have a choice. The future isn't set. It's what we make it.